So, symptoms of depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, psychosomatic illness, life satisfaction, positively correlated with increased waist to hip ratio. Bottom line is this: when I'm overweight, I don't feel as good about myself. When I'm overweight, my serotonin pools are lower, and it's harder for me to manage my weight for a lifetime. And you can look at studies over and over again that, is it the sleep? Is it the obesity? Is it the stress? It's all of it. It's all of it. It's, you come into this world with a set of genetics, and you have a mother that's either wired for stress, and she probably pre-programmed your brain chemistry to behave a certain way. You got exposed to things in your life early on, whether it be intense drug therapy. Kids are on extensive rounds of antibiotics early on, other types of drug therapy. Their diet, stress load, environmental load, drug history, right? Disease history. What have they had? Do they exercise? Amazing. I don't know if you saw this article. I mean, sometimes you see things published and you go, this couldn't be getting published. Exercise found to improve children's body mass. And then the next one was, exercise found to improve basically children's attention span in school. Really? You mean we're going to allow kids to get up and move around a little bit and get their heads out of the book for 5 minutes? And then maybe by that they can get back and they can get focused again? And that, gee, if we change their diet, that might improve their body mass? How much do we spend to figure that one out, right? I mean, my gosh. I need to get into more studies. I need to get on the funding side of more studies, right? Of course, there are important things to see. Other things that are so important, realizing that when you look at oxidative stress, so whenever you hear the term oxidative stress or free radical damage, what you're saying is, I am damaging my mitochondria. I am gonna lose my body's ability over time to be able to produce energy. I'm going to damage my DNA just by default. Almost 3,000 people tracked. BMI, an independent marker for oxidative stress. And so we saw that inflammatory isoprostanes were produced higher in people that were overweight. Just if a person's in there, this doctor should know, dietitian should know, pharmacist should know. You got somebody coming up to you that's overweight, by default, they need to be on antioxidants. Whether you use plant-based ones, there's people that want to use plant-based ones, there's people that want to use traditional antioxidants. One way or the other, they need antioxidants to help to neutralize the effect of their metabolism, which is they typically have higher free radicals in their chemistry. Why is it so important? And I'll try to make this succinct, but when you look at belly fat and what it does, one of the things that it does is it releases a chemical called resistin. And resistin basically turns down your insulin receptor's ability to be able to pick up insulin and carry sugar into your tissues to be burned. So your muscle tissue doesn't have the fuel it needs to be able to burn. You end up storing it as fat. And what continues to happen as a result of this is that you become more and more metabolically inefficient, so that whether it's your GLUT4 transport mechanisms within your cell that are trying to carry glucose across, or it's your insulin receptor trying to bind and carry that glucose across the cell, as those things go down and become less effective, energy production starts to wane. You build up more lactic acid in your tissues. You get more mitochondrial deficits for energy. And how many diseases, when you go and you read about diseases, chronic disease always goes back to that whole piece of mitochondrial deficiency. My mitochondria aren't generating energy. So this first piece, as I release resistin, I basically slowly lead myself towards that path of becoming a type 2 diabetic, right? I begin with insulin resistance and eventually become a type 2 diabetic. You make more estrogen with more belly fat. You also, one of the reasons, as women age, of course, start to drop their estrogen metabolism, what starts to happen? Start to gain weight. Why are they gaining weight? Belly fat makes estrogen. So they all of a sudden go, gee, why did I gain this weight over these last 5 years? It's not the only reason, but it's one of those factors that are in there. Other things start to happen. Angiotensinogen gets increased. Your blood pressure goes up. People that are overweight and are insulin resistant and have more belly fat tend to get more hypertension. And they get more hypertension because as you raise angiotensinogen, your kidneys start to falter on their ability to elegantly filter fluids going through them. So your circulation goes down. It's like clamping a hose, and your heart's got to pump that much harder to get that through your kidneys. And so you get renal hypertension as angiotensinogen goes up. Growth hormone production goes down. They've shown this. You get a decrease in growth hormone the higher your body mass index gets. And if you don't get growth hormone releasing, you can't repair tissues. You get an increase in the release of TNF-alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha. Well, if you track anything at all in research right now, that's like one of the kind of the golden molecules that people are trying to manage is TNF-alpha. Because with TNF-alpha, as TNF-alpha goes up, and what happens basically is you get macrophages or your white blood cells infiltrate your adipocytes the more you have visceral fat, and it sets up this machine for making inflammatory cytokines. So TNF-alpha does several really nasty things. One is that it actually shuts down that insulin receptor. So they've got a direct effect on insulin regulation if you're in an inflammatory condition. So it has a direct impact on insulin action. The other thing it does is it raises LDLs. It signals the raising of LDLs, a decrease in HDLs, and a raising of triglycerides. I think that's the opposite of what we want, right? It also raises something called lipoprotein(a), which is kind of like a lipoprotein that is especially correlated to the progression of cardiovascular disease. What else does TNF-alpha do? It causes an overactive immune system. So what starts to happen is you start to get an auto-inflammatory or an autoimmune-like response where your Th activator cells are too active and your suppressor cells aren't balancing that fire, so you get more allergic. You start to turn on your own tissues. Your immune system starts to become your own worst enemy. And so as that starts to occur, the other piece that happens is your T killer cells and your natural killer cells get less active. And as your T killer cells and your natural killer cells get less active, you don't identify cancer cells as easily. You can't repair things as easily. You can't attack things. Invaders don't get attacked. So vectors coming into your body or ones that you produce don't get neutralized. Rita, I mean, all you got to do is, I don't care what you read about in cancer today, cancer research, everyone's talking about inflammation as this piece that you're trying to control. Now, it's a pretty, cancer's a little more complex than, hey, we're going to quell the inflammation and that's going to be it. But it's certainly one of the big pieces at trying to neutralize the immune system so that you can begin to get activity back to your natural killer cells and your T killer cells. Of course, more oxidative stress. You get a depletion of glutathione. They found that less glutathione stores in people with higher visceral fat. And of course, glutathione is your body's principal antioxidant. It helps to protect you against things like heavy metal induction. So you get exposed to heavy metals. More glycation. We worry about oxidative stress, but when you glycate, when you stick a sugar molecule on a protein and your immune system attacks it, when you glycate tissues, it's 2,000 times more damaging than oxidative stress. So glycation has incredible impact on folks. More interleukin-6. Well, the more interleukin-6 I make, the more its partner, TNF-alpha, together, they run that auto-inflammatory pathway where your immune system begins to get overexcited. Other things, risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver. Just by visceral fat, just by becoming insulin resistant, you increase your risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver. That's before you ever even, become a type 2 diabetic. Then compound that by the fact that today, at least for us, we have a lot of patients come in, they're running fasting sugars of 105, and they're not being told that, you know what, you're really kind of a type 2 diabetic. You're not, you're still thinking that 126 is okay. When the guidelines are clearly that once things get up over 100, you got to get people taking their issue very seriously. It's really not occurring yet. It's not happening.